Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Patricia Ledesma-Vlon, and I'm the Assistant Curator of Moving Image here at the Walker Arts Center. The Walker Arts Center and the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden are located on the contemporary, traditional, and ancestral homelands of the Dakota people. The site, which was once an expansive marshland and meadow, holds meaning for Dakota, Ojibwe, and indigenous people from additional indigenous native nations who still and continue to live with us today. I say this to put into greater living context of where we are in the present and as a remembrance and acknowledgement of the history, power, and institutions and how we can collectively work together in solidarity today. I'd like to acknowledge and encourage those interested in learning more about the land on which they occupy to visit native-land.ca. As we consider the living context of the present, we extend our reflections to join in the cinema today to reinterpret and dissect myths, particularly the one located in the city known as Wisconsin Dells, 3 hours away. So I'm sure many of you, hearing from the laughters, have frequented the extravagant swimming pools and theme parks of the summer vacation central of the upper Midwest. Many of you as people who have lived and grown up in this region and have developed interpersonal ties and memories to what we know today as the Dells. Released in 2024, we're excited to host the Twin Cities premiere of Nellie Kluz's film, The Dells, and dissect the self-described water park capital of the world that is seared in the Midwest public imagination. In the film, we follow an ensemble cast of youth living off J-1 work visas through a series of their trials and tribulations. In it, we find that their optimism for the so-called American dream brushes against their real-life experiences, ultimately exposing us to moments that are raw, real, and transcendent beyond the state-governed structures and the Midwestern infrastructures that host these young folks living in this region from all over the world. We'll afterwards invite filmmaker Nellie Kluz to join in conversation with Lucy Schiller, writer and professor of nonfiction film at Texas Tech University and contributing writer to the Columbia Journalism Review. Lucy is also very instrumental to the early thought process behind the film, so we're very excited to have her and Nellie in conversation with us here today. So with that, we'll play the film, and then afterwards, Lucy and Nellie will present a short PowerPoint of images, which they'll talk about, which help sort of talk about like the film and how it came together, and then the two of them will be in conversation about the work, and we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. So with that, thank you for coming and enjoy the film.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to the movie. I'm Nellie Kluz, the director, and this is Lucy Schiller, who's doing the Q&A and kind of like little event with us tonight. Yeah, we're doing this kind of little, like a slight mini presentation beforehand, just because I was really happy to have Lucy come talk with me about the movie, because back in like early days of making the film, we had done some like a little bit of like research and writing about it together. So we thought we'd do like a little like she's going to read a little bit of text that she kind of wrote kind of related to the movie, but about giving a little more context about the Dells too, like historical context. And in that spirit of like a little vacation slideshow, I have some like postcard images of the Dells to kind of like go along with that. So we'll just do that, just a few minutes, and then we'll do the Q&A. So yeah. You want? Okay, wait, I think I use my clicker. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. All right. Work, 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 says Jason, the shuttle driver in the Dells, seemingly summarizing to a band of student workers what they have already gathered about their time in the United States. Much of this theme, as well as some of the visual landmarks of the film, might be familiar to Midwestern audiences. The Dells takes these small, recognizable items, work, water, amusement park music, inky Midwestern highways driven at night, and runs them along a current of its own making to a rhythm replete with the less familiar. We have Jason opine about multimillionaires and drop facts about white-tailed deer and mulberries. Voices swell, laugh, sigh. Motel signs seem to crackle and glow, gesturing at some far-off idea of what vacation for those non-workers is. Alpine Lodge, Fitch Hotel, Indian Trail. That latter name, by the way, is just one of many here that sells a mystique about nativeness that one Dells scholar characterizes as creating a comfortably nostalgic image of native peoples as a vanishing race no longer threatening and now safe for white consumption. Such imagery joins a long menu of constructed history and fantasy. Here are nods to the Alps, to other international destinations, to fairy tales, to the so-called frontier, and more broadly, to escape. The tourism of the past was built on such notions. It was only in 1931 that the Dells became the Dells, via a combination of railroad boosterism and the photographic persuasions of H. Bennett, who throughout the late 19th century had been taking stereographic images here, in particular of his son jumping across the same rocks that a dog does in the film we've just seen tonight. Stereographic imagery. It seems amazing that depth in photography really was kind of invented in such a multi-layered place, and that tonight we have a film that revels in scratching those layers, peeling them back, offering them for our attention. The Dells is a place not just full of artificiality and not just full of reality, but of the weird substrate oozing between those two categories. The chintzy, the touristy, the goofy are real. The working in such places is real. The man driving down the highway listing facts about white-tailed deer is real. And yet this place is also understood somehow as a vacation land, hovering outside of time. The Dells trains its eye on this substrate and the people who populate it. Thanks.
Cool. So we just have someone saying like nice things about the movie before we dig into talking about Q&A.
All right. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, this
We're
is
really
great
excited
to be
here.
Really special. Yeah. Did Patricia already ask who's been to the Dells? Maybe not. I see. Okay.
Oh, wow.
A good chunk of people. It's always a good thing to ask.
That is a lot of people. Well, yeah, we're going to have a little conversation between the two of us, and then we're going to turn it over to all of you for your questions. So we won't take up too much of your time. But Nellie, I just want to ask you how you got interested in this idea and this place originally.
So yeah, at the time I started making the movie, which was in 2019, I was living in Iowa City, which is where we know each other from. And I had been living also in Chicago prior to that. And I didn't grow up going to the Dells, but I have a kind of a ongoing interest in tourism and like scripted spaces, like places where there's a real sort of behind the scenes and like a proscenium that you can kind of like see around, and friends of mine who like, and I had made an earlier like short film that was about tourists kind of like pilgrimages, and Midwestern friends of mine were like, you should check out the Dells. I bet you'll find it interesting. So I just went to kind of like check it out and scout it out. And then I knew that there would be enough like layers and complexity there to make some kind of film. And then it was immediate. I was also curious about the J1s. Like I knew that they had a big contingent of these international students there, and it just soon became really obvious that that would be like the most interesting perspective for me to pursue.
It seems like a place, I mean, I actually went there on my high school senior trip way back when. And what I remember from the Dells, that was my very limited foray there, but what I remember is like just this unbelievable like amount of stimuli, visual and otherwise. And I'm just wondering if you could talk about like your first impressions and maybe talk a little bit more about like how you narrowed in on this particular group of students, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about it, which many of you have seen, is that it kind of just like rises up out of the farmland around it. That's like this very beautiful natural landscape. And so, you know, I always like to have like the novelty quotient high to kind of keep like, I don't know, it's like something to be kind of attracted to as like a filmmaker, like, oh, there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff to film, you know, no matter what happens. So I was interested in like the built environment and the landscape, and, you know, could always kind of like get interested in filming that regardless of what else was going on. And then the people I met in the movie, like I just sort of met people kind of in an organic ad hoc way, going to events that like there was like barbecues and sort of like meet and greet events for the different J1 students. I would go to those. I put up posters of myself at one point with like a picture of me and my phone number being like, do you want to be in my movie? Which was like a complete failure. And like one like townsperson called me, this like woman from the Dells, who was like, it's all a scheme, like they're being exploited. And I was like, okay. But then, once I met a few people, it became somewhat like, some people gravitated towards the idea more than others. And those people sort of became the main focus of the film. But I did kind of have to keep re-meeting people every year because for the most part, people go home at the end of the season. So it sort of was like a process that had to repeat itself. And it was really helpful once I met Jason, the cab driver, because, he's always there and he's a really gregarious, person who made it easy to meet people. And the cab is like a structure. So that was helpful too.
So how much time did you spend in the cab with Jason?
I would always in any given day, usually not every day, but several times a week if I was there, go out with him in the evening shift or the night shift and just kind of I don't know, the students are really busy. They work long hours. So I don't have a job there. So I felt like I had more downtime than them. And that was a useful moment for me to link up and be filming. And then, I met some people from the taxi, or we would just film the conversations in the taxi. So it was a very reliable generator of material. Plus it was fun for me to hang out with Jason.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from riding around with him.
Mulberries and white-tailed deer.
Yeah, he has he's got more where that came from. He's very knowledgeable. He's a very knowledgeable person, and he has genuinely interesting political opinions, and he's really cool.
He seems really great. You just touched on something I was going to ask you about, so I'm just going to ask you this question anyway. But I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the rhythms of the J1 visa program, and also the rhythms of these people who have this particular visa, their work in the Dells, how both of those kind of factors, this adherence to a particular rhythm that maybe wasn't your own, influenced the structure of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's some variation, but for the most part, the people coming to take part in this visa program are doing 2 or 3 months of, it's work and travel. They're doing 2 or 3 months of intensive work and then spending a month going on a trip in the US and going to New York and Las Vegas or whatever. And so there's that really limits the time, but I feel within that it kind of the time really expands. Someone is acts like they've been at their job for 1,000,000 years and they've worked there for 2 weeks. It has that summer camp resort vacation way that it kind of slows down the time, which I definitely felt I noticed and felt even being there as more of an outsider. And then also a lot of people have 2 jobs. And so there'll be the day shift and the night shift. So it was a good time to hang out with people is between those or late night or on their day off. So I kind of became aware, just sort of got to know the rhythms where it's okay, if I go to McDonald's at 4 p.m., I'm going to run into a bunch of people I know. Or on Tuesdays, a lot of people will have off from certain jobs and stuff. So just kind of became aware of it's very much a movie that is dependent on hanging out, and
love that.
Sort of had to get to know just with people when that would be possible and not.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about a few other films that this film is in conversation with, and when you were just saying the film is kind of about hanging out, I was reminded that you had said that you were thinking about Slacker. Are there other films that you feel you want this film to kind of be understood alongside, or were important to you in the making of it?
Yeah, I rewatched that movie and also Dazed and Confused as part of this. And then I was also thinking a lot about this documentary 17, which is from the early 1980s by Joel DeMott and Jeff Krines, a movie I love about teenagers in Indiana. And then actually programmed a series about this, so I know the answer to this question. There's also a 2002 documentary called My is America that I really love, about this girl from Vietnam coming to do her senior year abroad in Mississippi. So I was thinking about those movies for myself, but then also I sort of started being in the place. I started to get this feeling that just American media and teen movie genre really influences the place. People who come, these students, I'm I don't know where they necessarily pick this up, but they're very oh, it's a summer, it's America. It's partially just a universal youth experience, but the idea of this sort of glamorous exciting summer was definitely in the air. And I think people were like excited to sort of play into that and see how it would play out for them. And then like Emra, one of my film subjects who's really funny and observant, was like, America is just like Parks and Rec. Like I love Wisconsin. Everything here is just like that. And I was like, wow, they're really like this. People I'm meeting are really seeing this through these like media glasses, even maybe more so than I am in certain ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess like Grand Theft Auto. He was like, it's just like people like being like, like all day long.
I don't think I've ever thought of the Wisconsin Dells and Grand Theft Auto in the same vein, but I will. It's kind of interesting you're bringing up this idea of like conceptions of America, from the outside. And I think that there was an opportunity potentially to be very argumentative with this film or to make more of an argument. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about like, were you ever thinking about potentially trying to be more didactic or making like a particular point about these workers' experience in the US or even at this particular place? Or were you trying to do something different from the get-go?
I mean, I think something that is, I really like have been kind of committed to and really love like observation-based filmmaking, and that has its limitations because the material is coming from like outside of me and my feelings and opinions and stuff. Of course, I have a ton of control of like the edit and what I choose to film and what I choose to look at, but I find that sometimes like in like editing something or working on something, to me, I'm like, oh my God, this is so like polemical and didactic. Like so much of my like feeling about what's happening is sort of going into it, and then you take a step back at a slight remove, and then it feels like different. But that's kind of also what I like about it, because I feel like it does hopefully or a goal is to like just leave room and space for, I don't know, different interpretations, the people actually having the experiences that I'm filming and stuff. And then, I mean, also though, seeing this film now, like even it was finished last year, and like now the sort of realities and political conversation around like immigration is like so insane and like cruel and, very different than, even though there's like underlying, continuities, like so much has also changed. So it feels like it would feel very different finishing it now. And I think it would probably inevitably be like a different movie. Which is just to say that like, yeah, it kind of takes on the color of what I'm thinking about and like observing and looking through. But at the same time, it's like, it's both a reflection of my experience and my life, but hopefully like you want people in the film to be able to have some room to just say what they're saying and like wonder about it and have space, like, and hopefully the audience can have space to kind of like think their own thoughts in there too. So yeah.
Last question for me. I'm just curious if you can tell us a little bit about the sound. Something I really loved about this movie was this feeling of like the sound feeling like certainly a character, but it feeling very like placid and rhythmic and atmospheric. I don't know if I'm getting at what you were trying to do, but could you tell us a little bit about like your strategy there and what was important to you with the sound?
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I'm kind of out in the field, mostly doing the sound. Actually, I think doing all the sound by myself, except for some stuff that we didn't end up using. But so it's sort of like improvised in the moment when I'm actually like recording and trying to stick close to people and make sure you can like hear what they're saying as much as possible. But then also recording like additional sounds like wild sounds and ambient stuff. And then I think where it comes in most handy and where I end up being most like intentional about the sound is like when doing the editing and the sound design. Because like this movie, it's all taking place in one place, and I wanted it to feel like cohesive, but it's also of course like stitching together a million different little vignettes and pieces. So it was really helpful, and I kind of had to rely on trying to use the sound to like the music that you hear and stuff was like, helpful in connecting the different spaces. And then like, I had a lot of fun with, the person I worked with on sound design, Alex Iglesian. We did a lot of like fun, like Foley and like adding in little stuff, just to kind of zhuzh it up and like add things. But then he was like kind of making a step back too. He's like, this is a documentary. This is going to sound corny if we're like doing this. So, you know, you kind of have to know when to stop. But yeah, I think it was helpful and fun and just sort of like making the place like cohesive, hopefully. And I also had like a pop music song that I like became attached to and had to license, which was extremely stressful. Well, and I don't recommend doing that. They were nice about it. It didn't cost a lot of money.
I love the inclusion of is it Linda and Richard Thompson?
Yeah. I mean, so also I got a lot of like good ideas for music just for me to listen to from riding around in the taxi and like hearing people's different like pop hits that they had fun with, like sharing with each other. So I made a good like playlist for myself with like some good like international like cheesy pop songs.
Well, thank you. I think we can maybe turn it over to questions from the audience if people have any. There's going to be someone walking around with a mic and they are approaching you rapidly from behind.
Hello. I've got 3 one-word questions.
Whoa.
Number 1, how much time or footage did you film, and how did you, to boil down to an hour and 20 minutes or so? That's 1. Number 2 is, where is Jason from? Mm-hmm. And number 3 is, what did you shoot the film in? Were you using a digital camera? You were, mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the regular question is, were there cultures that were easier for you to integrate with and talk to and were willing to work with you versus others that were maybe standoffish?
Yeah. Just to cover the first ones, like it was over 4 summers to, you know, varying amounts of, I wasn't there for like the whole time. Every summer I was taking trips for like a few weeks at a time. So I can't remember exactly, but you know, time spent over that amount of time. And I honestly didn't end up with as much material as I might have expected, just because of what I was saying about them working all the time. And like, you know, I actually tried to film with like at water parks and at hotels and stuff like that, but like these employers just like, why would they want me? Or like I wasn't even able to be convincing, like, oh, it'll make you guys, you know, like immediately it seemed obvious that they're probably like not paying these people that well and stuff. So it just seemed also more interesting to be in the social moments. So it wasn't too overwhelming. And also like I felt like in terms of boiling it down, like I feel like a lot of the moments that ended up standing out to me in real time were what ended up being in the movie, even there was, you know, stuff that didn't make the cut. So it was difficult and like challenging to structure, but not like too crazy. And yeah, just using a digital camera and keeping it very like just me for the most part, although I have a wonderful producer, Jess Pinkham, who came with me for part of the time and is really helpful with like talking to people and wrangling everything and like structuring things. Yeah. And then the last question. Oh yeah. I mean, it's less about like, I think cultural specificity and more just like personalities and sort of chance encounters. Like some people, you know, you really hit it off with right away for whatever reason. Some people are, you know, I mean, I do think, yeah, like it was helpful for meeting people when people are sort of like in their big international groups because they're all speaking English and they're meeting like it was easier to meet people than I might have expected because people are in the mindset of like study abroad, meet people, have new experiences. Like they're really open more than you might be when you're just like at home with your own friend group. So that was helpful. But, you know, obviously not everyone is interested in, you know, whatever. Oh, and Jason is from Wisconsin. But originally he's from Alabama. But I don't think that's reflected in his accent. He just got a Wisconsin accent.
I'm wondering if you could sort of describe some of the thinking behind a lot of the photographic. There's a very like specific photographic style that you sort of landed on, and it kind of felt like watching a late 20th century documentary photography, William Eggleston kind of thing, kind of like come to life. And I'm sort of curious, like, how are you approaching the actual imagery making as you were shooting this? It's like you're in these tough situations, but there are moments of it that are like really, really photographically beautiful. So I'm curious, where does that come from?
I mean, in terms of the like still like more composed stuff, the nice thing about like the process of making this is that I was also sort of like being a tourist at the same time. Like I had downtime to use to kind of try different stuff and like get a shot that I really liked of like X, Y, or Z attraction. And I mean, I kind of wanted to show the postcards too, because like there's just so much imagery of the place like laying around with like in the gift shops, like it kind of like I think demands that kind of treatment of trying to make it like sort of postcard like in a way, or I was having fun trying with that. And then for the more like, you know, in the moment, like, you know, action packed kind of stuff is just sort of trying to, you know, do it in real time as best as possible. And like, but the place is so photogenic also that like the light there and it has like really like cinematic like special effects going on at all the time, you know, with like the signage. And so it's almost like you're kind of like skimming off the top of that too, which is like a nice time to shoot. That's what makes it partially a nice place to shoot, I thought. It's like very inspiring visually.
There we go. Hi, thanks so much for sharing your film with us. I had a question about the multilingual nature of this film. I was curious, as you were talking about the way you chose to integrate, you know, these characters throughout your film, just some of the logistics. I assume you don't speak all the languages that these young people do. And so, like, the scenes in which the young Turkish men are speaking, I was curious, like, are you rolling, not knowing what they're saying and sorting through it later? Or did you have, you know, people who were working with you? I just thought it seemed like a challenge to make a film like this, where there's so many different, like, insider groups and you don't have access actually to what they're saying in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I don't speak any Turkish at all, and I did just film. Well, it's sort of a mix, like we're interacting and chatting, and so I'm understanding the general outlines of what's going on in the conversation, but then they fall into their own conversation without me. So yeah, I had it translated afterwards, but it was a strange dynamic, which wasn't like, it's not ideal. I'm like you find out that the thing that they're saying is like the most important thing. You're like kind of out of it for a second or something. It takes away like obviously like a data point that's usually pretty important. Although it's kind of interesting in other ways, but I was kind of like having to talk with them, being like, okay, I'm getting this translated, like, and they're like, okay. And they would like talk to the translator and be like, don't use this part, or like Ennis is like, follow me on Instagram, like this is my handle. So there was some of that, and then like it was interesting too, because like sometimes you could tell like through the transcript and what they're saying that they genuinely were like forgetting more. Like sometimes it'd be more like referencing me, and sometimes it'd be more like off in its own direction. So that was kind of interesting. And yeah, like it was. I'm not sure if I would do it again, but it led to some cool surprises in the edit too, and it made it feel much more like almost like mechanical or something. I'm like, I'm following body language, I'm following the speaker and the listener, and like it's weird, but it works pretty well.
Hi, is there anybody else? I was just curious kind of what your feedback has been like from people who are really super familiar with the Dells. Because for me, I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa. The Dells was kind of part of our culture. And when I went to the University of Iowa, and at summers I worked at Noah's Ark and lived amazing. There, and lived in a double wide trailer that we called the House of Mold. And we, you know, it was just like a real kind of a rite of passage. But also to see that on screen, it's like, well, yeah, it's a tourist trap. Of course it is. So I'm just kind of curious what your feedback's been like in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a touchstone for so many people. So it's been kind of mixed. Like I got this cryptic email after I showed it in Chicago from someone who was just like, you need to look into the Tommy Bartlett like water skiing show. Like it was extremely magical. And I just had to be like, it closed down. So, I mean, it's like, it's kind of weird, and like I sort of consciously chose to kind of like stick pretty closely with the perspective or a facsimile of the perspective of the like J1 students that I met, because coming in, like, it is such a novelty to like an outside person, even though you get used to it. So yeah, I mean, I've gotten like just sort of, it's interesting because I feel like people who just like have been to the Dells like appreciate it differently, and they're like they're evaluating and being a little like not harsher, but they're like see the stuff that you left out. So I feel like mostly the feedback I've been is like, where's the water skiing, where's the whatever, because there's just like way too much. And I did struggle with that in the edit of wanting to like give a sense of like the place, but without being trapped in like a shot for shot like remake all up and down the main drag or whatever. So it was difficult. There were some hard things that had to be cut, but yeah, it's been kind of a mix and mostly positive.
Hello, great job. It was an awesome film. I was wondering, how did you land upon the structure, the architecture of the film? It felt like one summer, but you said you filmed like over 4 years. Was that initially kind of your goal, or did a lot of that structure come across like in the edit?
Yeah, I always was aiming to have it feel like one summer, kind of in the tradition of like a teen summer kind of movie, like try to make the time feel like that. And it's so repetitive that like the rhythms and the things that happen are like happening more than one time usually. So I was happy that it felt like that could pretty much work. And the structure in general, yeah, like I think it was a little challenging, like I was saying, because there are obviously like character arcs to a degree, but that's not really the structure. So I just made like lots of granular like little vignettes and then kind of moved them around together. And like, so the scenes were like roughed out or like pretty close to their final version early on, a lot of them, and then it was like a puzzle of moving them around. And then after that it sort of became about having fun with like the transitions and trying to smooth it out like day night. And so yeah, like once I got it settled, it was just a matter of like trying to fine tune it. But yeah, there could be other versions of the sequences of this movie for sure that I would probably be happy with as well, but it was like that was the process.
Hi, thank you. One of the main aspects of the movie that I really liked was how it shows how the Dells and places like the Dells, that they're so dominated by mass culture, you can still have these really like specific and moving experiences there. I think, I mean, even us being at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, like it's easy to look at this and say like, oh, they're at Culver's and Walmart. But I'm interested in hearing from you. You said you were as a tourist there and also a filmmaker. Like, what are the spaces in the Wisconsin Dells that you really liked the most? Like, what were the most pleasant places for you to be in as someone who spent a lot of time there?
Yeah, I mean, I did go to Culver's a lot, and I love it there. I think meeting the students opened up like some of the more like emotionally resonant experiences that I had there were like just through the people I met and like, you know, conversations with them and like things that made it into the film and some other stuff that didn't. Like driving around the taxi felt like a really nice like version of that place. I also love just like the nature there, and like there's an amazing beach like park that you can go to. So I was doing a lot of like trying to take breaks and go like swimming sometimes, and a little bit of water park stuff, but it's not really like, I don't like going to water parks very much. I find it like disgusting. So yeah, and also just the town itself, just like walking around at night, like it's really special. And that kind of like smaller Midwestern town in the summer, I feel like it was nice to be out late at night with those students and sometimes, and like going home back to my place. So yeah, it's like a really strange mix of like being on a weird vacation and like doing a lot of work and sometimes feeling like, what am I doing? But yeah, it's I was impressed too by how they found like moments in the mass culture that I was like, it was a little like good reminder that that's like very possible.
Yes, hello. Thanks for being here. You know, when I think of the Wisconsin Dells, I think of it as very much like a crossroads of Wisconsin, but also like a destination. And I was struck by the kind of the same sentiment from the people in the film. Like they had kind of like arrived in this like land with a lot of promise. And I was struck by the woman who was like trying to kind of expand her work and get in a van with this like stranger and like keep working. And so I was really kind of curious how you saw people's perspectives change about America and kind of this like promise of working and kind of maybe a better future for themselves as your time spent in the Dells.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being someone who's very used to America and like older than them, I was kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop a lot of the time. Like I'd be like, okay, now you're like living in your van. You got fired from your job. They're not taking care of you. Like, not that I want them to be like disappointed, but I was like, where is the disillusionment coming in? And I think there was like moments of it, obviously, that I observed, or some people just like it more than, or like, oh, the US like sucks. And some people are like still like, oh, it's amazing. But I think because of the kind of like, just like the youth and like optimism of everybody, it kind of like it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't sink, those kind of things just don't sink in as much, you know, because it's like, and also they're going home, so it has this like unreality to it for a lot of people, although of course some people have an eye to like continuing in the US in various ways, so maybe they're thinking about it a little differently. But yeah, I just think I saw moments of that, like especially I feel like the one girl who was like, the food is really bad, she just was like, it sucks, like so there's definitely concrete things. But yeah, the people who were like hoping, they were very new to town, the girl who was like hoping to get like a new job and stuff, and I think I think, you know, a few weeks later or a couple months later, she like was like, you know, because she'd want a very specific thing, and that wasn't really going to happen, probably, like not as much money as she thought she would make.
I think maybe one more question.
I have kind of a two-part question. So part one, have you kept up with some of the subjects of the documentary, and what have their responses been to the film? You know, where's our cab driver? Can we add him on Facebook? And then part two, what are some practical things that we as tourists or multi-generational families who are still going to the Dells, what are some practical ways that we can support J1s? Is it tipping in cash? Is it supporting certain types of businesses? Is it, you know, what are some practical recommendations that you have?
That's a good question. I think the second part of that, I feel like generally the mom and pop like businesses, like the not big resorts, have a much better reputation of like treating people at stuff. And also like tips, I think, are always super welcome for everybody, but especially these students. Jason is not on Facebook. Wait, and was there another part that I forget? Wait. Oh yeah, of course. So it's actually been kind of related to the last question. I feel like I sent it to students somehow thinking that they would find it like such a bummer, but that's where my perspective is coming in, you know, and so many of them kind of responded with like, oh, the best summer. Like they had like a sort of, because it has that like out of reality, like this isn't my real life, this is my weird study abroad or work and travel abroad, like even people who had like the guys with a van, I was like, that didn't seem like a good outcome. And they were like, oh, it was a very special summer. Cause you know, you're away from home. They're like, I think there's like, you know, the novelty of it is very, very powerful no matter what happens. Like with many experiences you might have in like your early youth. And then also, there's like that nostalgia thing that kicks in where it's like I think with anything that you invest a lot of like imaginative energy and emotional energy and time into, you're kind of like, I mean, I do this too. You're like, that was great. That went great. Like, that was awesome. You know, like there's a self-fulfilling prophecy to it that I think really helps the kind of program and stuff too. Cause like, I don't know, nobody's trying to go home and be like, ugh, that was terrible. I mean, some people might, but I think there's a sort of confirmation bias to like, I was going to have this incredible glamorous US experience. I did have this incredible experience and like integrating it pretty like seamlessly. And I've had where some people just watch it and they like didn't really, I could tell they didn't really watch it. They were like, awesome, like love that part that I'm in. They respond like 15 minutes later, like good job. But a lot of people have had some really nice, thoughtful responses as well, and some fun like Q&As with people who like did the program and like had interesting like things to contribute. So it's been kind of really cool to talk to people who did the program. It's on the website of my distributor, memory.is, which is like a terrible website name. And it's also streaming into the end of October through the sort of niche streamer Metrograph. And then hopefully it should be on Canopy later in the fall. So it'll be like online in various forms if you search for it and go to my website and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much to the Walker for having us, to Patricia especially for like hosting us so well, and to everybody for coming, because it's very special to show it in a Dell's knowledgeable crowd. And thanks so much to Lucy for doing a great job.